post-Easter Sunday, and we're grateful to be back. We are away, actually, and we thank God for another opportunity to come and share with you, particularly our online audience and those that are here with us. We're here again to share the word of the Lord for about 40 minutes or so. And this morning, we're going to be talking about salvation. What is it? Salvation, what is it? For some of you, this is going to be a very, very elementary subject. But it occurred to me that there are a lot of people who don't know what the word salvation is. They don't know what is meant when people say saved. What does that mean? What does that entail? So this morning we're going to try to unpack that, particularly for my online audiences who are listening in, trying to learn a little bit more about Christianity. I'm trying to understand it, trying to make sense of it. Some of it makes no sense at all. Some actually criticize it completely. We understand. We're not offended. We're going to continue to share the word of the Lord and pray that you will come to a greater understanding as to God's purpose for your life. This morning, we're going to be talking about salvation. What is it? And who needs it? Paul says to the church of Ephesus, he says, "For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is a gift of God." So we're talking about salvation, which is a gift of God. Still, for many people, that term is very Christian-y, very religious, doesn't make a lot of sense. And we're not certain what people think at all when they hear that phrase. Do they know what it means? Do they understand it? And I'm not certain that it makes sense to some people. Some people might even ridicule it on the basis that they don't get what the term actually means. People will come to you who are in the Christian circles sometime and they'll say, "Are you saved?" And people say, "Well, what does that mean? Are you saved?" And also, there are people who are introduced to Christianity and are discussed. A discussion is made with them about salvation, and they don't totally understand what it really means. They just know that that's an expression that's commonly used among Christians. And so we're hoping this morning to unpack that and explain that in a little better detail. Now, I recognize that my audience is broad. There are some people here who are agnostics. We welcome you. We welcome your questions, your comments. Even if you totally disagree, we welcome you. We hope that you will continue to listen. And we also recognize that we sometimes reach out to people who are atheists, who think a belief in an invisible God is irrational and makes no sense at all. We accept your viewpoint as well. We don't cast you away. We want you to tune in and listen. We believe that God wants to speak to you, even though you don't believe there is a God. But we want to talk this morning about salvation. What is it? The first thought that I want to tap into is what salvation, what the word in itself means or what it suggests. Salvation suggests that someone is in peril or in danger. So the first thought behind salvation implies that we as mankind are in trouble, that there's some danger, that we're born in trouble, that we have trouble from our childhood up. Everybody's trouble is different, but the reality is that we all have some issue going on, some weakness, some challenge, some victimization that we suffer from. Some of us are even the victimizers, but we all are in need of some form of salvation. We want to explain what the Bible's expression on what the word salvation means, but I want to first kind of tap into hopefully your understanding of what's going on in our social world. I want everybody to acknowledge this fact. In our society, are we in trouble? Are we in peril? You'll notice in my next slide, there's a lot of things going on in our present world. That slide with the gentleman out in the water, that's supposed to be sort of taken from the theme of Jaws, where he's in trouble to get the thought coming. But I want you to take a look in our next slide. Our next slide is our society in trouble? And I want you to really think about that. Whether or not you're a Christian or not, we are suffering in a society where there is an immense amount of problems. Starts right off with youth and gun violence here in this city. Sad to admit that on a daily basis, there are shootings around New Haven, Connecticut, where we live. And many of our cities, this is a rather small city, but definitely in our big cities, there's a lot of youth violence, a lot of shooting. Some of it is recorded and makes it on the news, but there's a lot of shootings and killings that don't even make it to the news. There's a lot of people that are shot on a daily basis. There's a major problem with teen suicide, but not just teen suicide, suicide in general. There's a lot of people that are taking their own lives. There's a lot of family breakdown. There's a lot of drug abuse. There's a lot of unhappy children. And you would think that in this modern time, we consider ourselves in modern time in a highly tech society, a society that has so much to offer. We have so many things to enjoy. You would think that with all the things that we have to enjoy, that people would be happier, that families would be stronger, that violence would be less, because we have so many advances in technology and so many things available to us. You would think that people would be surviving better, but the reality is that whether we're willing to acknowledge it or not, we're getting worse. Violence is on the rise. It's incredible to me how often you hear about mass shootings, even shootings in schools. You would think that with all that we have, with all the social environments that we have, with all the psychiatry going on, with all the counseling that's available, you would think that our culture would be in better shape. But the reality is, and I hope I'm not depressing you, but the reality is we are worse off than we have ever been. It is no doubt that people recognize that we need a change. Our culture needs a massive change. We need something to occur. We need someone to help us deal with the many, many things that are going on in our culture. People that are not religious at all recognize that we need a change. We need a change in family. We need a change in education. We need a change in our government. We just really, 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 really need a change. Something is wrong. You don't have to go far. These are issues that are occurring when kids are young, all the way up into adulthood. There is a massive need for change. And so I want to challenge you with this thought. Is it social change that we need? Is it the many things that many of our governmental leaders are suggesting will fix the problem? So many of our politicians and representatives, individuals that we don't have so much of a grip on anymore, all have these different views on what we really need to do. What do we need to do to curb poverty? What do we need to do to increase education? Many people think that education is the answer, and we have all kinds of educational institutions, and we are making education more available. We're making it easier to obtain, easier to pay for, and yet that doesn't seem to fix the problem. There are issues that go along with the educated as well as the uneducated. How can we fix poverty? How can we make families more stable? What can we do about our economy? You would think that with all the technology and the things that we have grown into, that our economy would be better. But yet you keep seeing all kinds of economic problems that are going on all the time. There's financial issues that are consistently occurring, and yet we seem like we don't really know what the real answer is. And I'm going to share this, I'm sharing these thoughts, preparing you to talk about salvation, but I want you to understand and acknowledge the fact that our culture is in major, major trouble, and we need to be honest with ourselves. whether you're raised up in a Christian family or not. Even our Christian families are struggling. We're not what we used to be, what we should be. There is definitely a need for change. And this is the change that I really believe that we need, and many Christians are praying about this. What we really need is we need a change of heart. It isn't a political change that we need. It isn't governmental change we need. Yes, we do, but what we really need is a change of heart. If we don't have a change of heart, then the people who are in the political position are causing our situation to be worse. And I think that many of you will acknowledge and admit to that. If man does not have a heart change, if we don't have an internal change, it isn't just our environment and our sociology that needs to change, our culture and our society that needs to change. It is us. The problem really starts, it lies what's inside of us. We are in trouble because of ourselves. We're causing the very problems that we're talking about. The heart of God and the human heart must match. That's the issue. God is a good, a faithful, and loving God, but the problem is we are going in two different directions. And we need a heart change. A heart change is extremely important. If the society has a heart change, we will see things change. And I can prove that. There is data to substantiate that when people have a heart change, their actions change. And when their actions change, the group and the community that they influence changes. And when the community changes, and the community collectively has a heart change, then the society itself begins to change in a positive way. Here's the big question that we need to ask ourselves: can we change our own heart? I want to stop for a minute, and I want to ask my online listeners to consider this. Can you change your own heart? When I say your heart, I know that I kind of illustrated this with a man and a heart in the middle of his chest, but I'm really not talking about that organ that pumps. That's a metaphor that we use for really the center of our being. But when I talk about our heart, I'm really talking about our soul, our thinking, our mind, our viewpoints, our attitudes. When I talk about our heart, it's what's really inside of us. What do we think about on a daily basis? What are our goals? What do we want to achieve? I am praying that America will wake up and recognize that what has happened to us is our heart has gotten corrupt. It's hard to hear that. It's hard to acknowledge that. But the reality is that our heart has gotten hard. From the beginning and the introduction of this nation, and we were not perfect by any means. There are many non-godly and Christian things going on, but as a whole, governmentally, we had a different type of heart. And now we have a heart that is absolutely against God. I am going to avoid being too specific about that today. I often talk about it in my lessons, but the reality is that the heart of man has gotten really corrupt here, even in our country and through our society. And many people are saying, I can't believe what's going on. I can't believe what's happening. I can't believe the laws that are being proposed. I can't believe the changes that are going on. And the reality is because man has got a corrupt heart, and we don't recognize that our heart is corrupt. We don't want to acknowledge it's corrupt. Most people would like to say, I'm a good person. Most people would say that. If you ask them, are you a good person? Most people would say, yeah, I'm a good person. And if you were really honest and you ask them, well, what do you think about? What are your goals? What do you do? What are your plans? And you will find out that most of us suffer from wanting to and practicing things that are against the will of God, but we still consider ourselves a good person. Somehow or another, we believe we're good even though we don't always do good things. But what we really need is a God heart. We need to have an understanding of what God really expects to be in our heart, what our minds, what our soul needs to be dwelling on, and where we need to live. I'm going to try to bring in the message of salvation and what salvation really is, now that I hope you understand that we are in peril, our society is only in peril because of us. We're only in trouble because of us. It's our hearts that have brought us to this situation. And no modern technology, no advances, no technological changes would change the world if our hearts are corrupt. So really the goal really is a heart change. If we can change our own heart, then this is the question. We can change our own heart. Why is murder on the rise? Why is divorce on the rise? Why is school violence on the rise? Why is drug abuse and drug addiction on the rise? Why is hatred and racism, prejudice, bigotry, and disunity on the rise? If we could change our hearts, and most people, as I stated, would say, I'm a good person, I have a good heart. Yet, our society is plagued with these kinds of things. And most of us would suggest it's other people, not us. But the reality is some of these areas touch us. If we could change our heart, why is there so much family discord? Why is there so much suicide among teens and other groups? Why is there so much poverty and homelessness? Why is our government behaving the way it is behaving? We have never seen politicians, and I'm going to try to be unoffensive, a little less offensive today, and not be specific to which governmental figures, but we have never seen governmental figures behave the way that they're behaving today and speak the way they're behaving today. Why is there so much disharmony in government? Why is there so much open hatred among leaders? It's amazing to me how leaders, governmental leaders, speak about one another publicly and openly, unashamedly. The insults that are thrown from public leader to public leader, the atmosphere of being gentlemen and respectful is gone among government. How could we expect any better in our society when our most top officials in our government are not respectful individuals or toward each other because they disagree? This is a clear indication of a serious heart problem. If we could change our heart, why is there so much sickness and disease? What's causing the pandemics? I'm almost afraid to say what I really want to say on that subject because I don't want to end up on Facebook jail. But what's causing this? There seems to be no real solution. So what we're really facing is a need for salvation. And I'm hopefully going to explain what Christians mean when they say the word saved. And they use the phrase salvation. What do they mean? What's the intent? Well, first, I hope that I reasonably explain that we're in trouble and that we need salvation. And so I'm going to share a little bit from the scriptures. There was one case in the Bible where an individual actually used that phrase. The person was not a Christian, and I'm hoping that in my next 15 minutes or so, I'll be able to break down and explain what that means. But I am coming out of, for you that want to turn to a scripture, for you that are Bible readers, I'm going to a story in the book of Acts that deals with some individuals who were out reaching out to people and talking to them about their need to have salvation. Even in that culture, there were individuals who are not familiar with what salvation was. And these two individuals were Christian individuals who were out communicating to the culture at that time the need for salvation. These two gentlemen that went out were touring in the area and were sharing the message of salvation happened to come in, and I'm giving the backdrop before I read the scripture. I'm giving the backdrop of the story. These men were out sharing the scriptures with the people, talking about God, talking about the need for salvation. And they happened to run into a young woman who was disturbing their meeting by yelling out, "These men are men of God who are showing us the way of salvation.